one of the coolest things in the world is when you can leverage fan testimonials and reviews. All of a sudden it gets taken down to earth, where it's not like, oh, such and such magazine said this. It's Ed in Florida who loves folk music just like me was talking about this, and that's more relatable.
You are now listening to the Creative Juice podcast, brought to you by IndiePRO.io.
What's up, Indies? Welcome back to the Creative Juice podcast. I'm your host, Jack McCarthy, and this is episode 265. With me, as always, is my co-host, Mr. Ed Isola. Ed, what's going on, dude?
Dude, feeling good. That is a lot of episodes, and feeling good. Excited to get into it today.
Every week when we record, I can't believe as the ticker of episodes keeps going up. Thank you guys for being here and hanging out with us and talking about music marketing and being nerdy. I hope you dig all the stuff that we've been talking about so far this year, because we've been having a real blast coming up with the topic calendar and bringing on new guests and sharing stories with you from the agency. It's been a real blast. If you guys dig what we're doing here, please, it really helps us out if you make sure to subscribe to the show wherever you listen to podcasts and drop us a review. We'd love to hear what you think about what we're doing. Today we're going to get into a topic that I think is an interesting one, and it came up from a kind of a troubling little audit that I noticed, and that's that a lot of artists and bands and musicians, they don't get a lot of reviews on their online stores. It's funny that I led with talking about reviews for the show, but I often see artists that have products and offers on their stores, and then they've got the review functionality turned off for their store, or they don't really have anybody talking about what it is that they're selling. And that led me to a really interesting idea that Ed and I have been kicking around since, which is about letting your fans make your best content for you. And a lot of times what that comes in the form of is reviews and testimonials and any kind of user-generated content that really showcases what you're doing. So we're going to talk all about that today.
It's interesting because, admittedly, I do not have reviews turned on in my store. And I'm sitting here thinking about, why don't I have reviews turned on? And it's probably just did not cross my mind, even knowing and being involved in marketing for tons of other people. For myself, it's kind of like, oh, I didn't even think about the fact we should have reviews on. So I feel like you just kind of said, there's a lot of easy ways to expand and to use those. And it's things that you're not doing anything wrong by not having it on. You're just missing an opportunity, probably because you're not thinking about it. So it'll be cool.
I think when musicians think about user-generated content right now in 2023, our brains kind of automatically go to user-generated content, like getting people to stitch my TikToks or my Instagram reels and, remake content, their own content with them and kind of get sharing virality going. And that's a bit different than what we're going to talk about today. And I think actually that's more challenging. It's more difficult to encourage fans to want to do, because there's a level of, kind of social capital that pulls out. I think when you ask fans to do that, and it also can feel kind of awkward and weird. You don't want to ask your fans to do weird TikTok dances maybe. And I think without a level of virality, it's kind of difficult to facilitate that. But there are types of user-generated content that you can facilitate actually quite easily that I think actually will end up being more impactful to your overall growth as a business than just, top of funnel organic content.
I think it's interesting because there is that distinction where you're just saying, if somebody says user-generated content, even my mind goes to, hey, let me get people using my sound on TikTok, right? That's such a weird, cringy ask, I feel like, and even fans and stuff know that. And so like you said, that's not what we're going to talk about today, but I think it's important to recognize that, because if I go to a fan and I say, hey, will you make a video using my sound, so-and-so, unless it's a super creative way to ask it, as a fan receiving that message, I'm going to be kind of no, not really, leave me alone. At least that's my reaction. But because it feels kind of like I'm being used in that instance if you're just asking me to use the sound, right?
It does, yeah, it does.
But the stuff we are going to talk about today, and Jack already mentioned some of them, testimonials, the store reviews, videos or pictures of your product. As a fan, those are things that I'm more inclined to do because it feels like I'm helping the artist that I like. versus like just being a tool to get where they want to go. And so I think that's a really cool distinction as you brought that up to start this episode, because we're really going to get into things that you are going to probably have to ask your fans to do, but things that are also going to be able to be easily framed as like a friend helping a friend, not a friend helping a desperate friend, if that makes sense.
No, I think that's a really great jumping off point, I think, to talk about here. And I think that's why there's a big difference between top of funnel user generated content, which, you made a good example of, like, use my sound on TikTok, versus a review on your store, or a photo of them with the product that they just received, because there is inherent value that had already been given from before the ask for UGC was made for those types of examples. For example, someone getting a product that they're, super excited about in the mail and being overwhelmed with the packaging and the extras that came with it and the fact that it got there on time and all the things that, a customer comes to expect and really want. When those boxes are checked off, the desire to want to share that with the world is, kind of at an all-time high, versus share my sound on TikTok or use my sound on TikTok. What value was given to them ahead of doing that makes that ask appropriate? I don't think that there is one. In fact, I can't think of an example where there would be one. There would have to be some kind of, some kind of incentive. And I guess you could use that kind of ask and then, frame it as like a giveaway. And, maybe that's a great idea to touch on. But I think, like you said, Ed, it's pretty tough to make that without feeling cringy and kind of like make people feel weird.
Yeah. And so, like, talking about, well, then the question is, what can you ask people to do, and what the heck are you guys even talking about, right? And so I think we're going to run through these ideas, but like the things that come to mind for me are testimonial videos about the music. Again, asterisk mark, these are all things you have to get creative with asking people, because people are kind of awkward if you say, hey, will you make a song about or a video about what my music means to you? They're just going to probably awkwardly sit in front of the camera. So like we will talk through these, but like, you've got like about your music, you've got your merchandise, you got your live shows, and both written and photo video content. Those are kind of the three big ones that stick out to me to dive into.
100%. Yeah. And I think that that's an important distinction to make too, is not all of this lives in video. Not all of this lives in photos. It can live in text. And I think that that's an underutilized one, actually. Email replies from your fans with heartfelt messages, comments, DMs, all of that stuff is great user-generated content that you can then share and repurpose and use in a variety of places, whether it be in your email campaigns, on your product pages, in your ads, on your posts. And we'll get more into that. But I think that it all lends into this idea that, like, a great recommendation from a fan, a customer, is one of the most powerful things that you can have in your arsenal to get other people to take an action. What's more powerful than another fan who's just like them, who likes the same things as them, who looks like them, talks like them, is into the same stuff as them? What's more powerful than one of those people, giving you a big thumbs up and I love this band, I love this artist, I love this thing that I got. That's way more impressive than, a press quote or a magazine quote, to be honest. I think that's one of the coolest things in the world, is when you can leverage fan testimonials and reviews. All of a sudden it gets taken down to earth, where it's not like, oh, such and such magazine said this. It's Ed in Florida, who loves folk music just like me, was talking about this. And that's more relatable. And I think that that's really, really powerful and often overlooked.
Yeah, it's interesting, because I think, like, when people start to say, like, okay, well, I want these big magazine names, but it is more powerful, in my opinion, where if I see an artist and says, Rolling Stone says this, in my mind I go, oh, that's super credible, but like not that interesting to me. If I see like a fan testimonial or something, I'm kind of like, oh, okay, that's pretty cool. And so, like, I think with starting with music, something that I've seen, if we're going to go through those kind of music, video, photo, and like concerts, those are the ones that come to my mind. Like I was saying, music testimonials that I've been seeing, like for myself personally. Again, it's not somebody sitting there being like, hi, my name is Ed and I love the 502s because, right? But there's been a lot of cool things of like people videotaping their friends listening to the music, and they send these over to us just on social media, right? Like videotaping the friends, like using a song set to kind of their backdrop. Like there is some use of similar to TikTok, for example, but you're not putting a call out for it. And so I think that things where you say like, hey, send an email blast out, be like, hey guys, I'm trying to put together, a post about kind of my favorite artists, and I've had this cool idea about, I'd love to know what like you guys love about the 502s, right? I'm just using us as an example. And I think you could open it up to, send me back a text, send me back a written text, send me back a video, send me back your favorite picture, and you open these different platforms up. But that's where I think you get creative with this UGC content, is where you're not, I think what I'm getting at is people pigeonhole themselves a lot and say, please send me a film video. And it's like, well, maybe someone's not comfortable doing that. But if you're asking for people to tell you how they feel about your music, for example, you can open up the different avenues. And I think that that's going to help you get a better understanding of where people are and what they like about you, and be creative with it.
Well said. It's like be open, be a little open ended. Unless you really need something specific, you can be open ended. I think your example of like, tell me what you love about music, like shoot me a text, send me a video, send me a photo. I mean, here's another example of something like this that gets a little more narrow. And you can start thinking about where these fit into your marketing campaigns too. And your overall marketing is just like, let's say you were coming off a tour and you wanted to get a plethora of fan content to use for your next run of shows. You could send an email out to your fans and be like, hey, send me like your favorite pick from you and your friends from the last show that you went to of ours. And you might get a whole bunch of stuff from your fans that are just like photos of them being excited at a show, them taking pictures of the whole crowd, whatever it might be. That kind of stuff is great to have on hand and kind of showcase like, these are the people who love us. And again, like that's specific to a very particular moment, or a particular milestone that you're working towards. It's a tour in that case.
This kind of actually brings up a different distinction in my mind, which I don't know that we were intending to go this way, but I think that if you split up the UGC like we were talking about, where it's like you have the things where you ask people to use your sound or whatever, and we're not talking about that today, but we're talking about the pictures, the videos, the quotes that fans can give you. I think that within that realm, there's then two kind of separations and categories, where the first is you send an email, you make a post, you ask people to give something to you. And I think the easier one is the stuff that people just naturally make. And that's something that you don't have a ton of control over, but it's something that like I've been for myself collecting that, right? And people, after they come to a show, they post a picture with their friends on Instagram or they tag us. They post a story, they post in our Facebook group. Like these are things that as they've been good quality, we have gone and we've kind of flagged them and we've saved them. And we tell people like, hey, we're going to save this, like, is this cool? Can you email us this video? But those are kind of I think like the first step of getting comfortable with what kind of UGC do your fans even like in the first place, is if you're playing shows or people are reposting about your music on Facebook or Instagram stories, like paying attention to how they talk about it and then DMing these people and collecting that info. That in itself, I think, was the first place we really started doing UGC. And that has allowed us to understand, like, here's the kind of stuff people like, here's what they do with their friends, and also create a backlog of UGC content that we really didn't have to do anything more than just being alert and messaging and collecting it into our bucket, so to speak. We didn't have to like grow the fruit. We just had to pick it, if that makes sense, for that first option.
I love that. Yeah. The difference between asking and collecting, and how, collecting can get you comfortable with the process of using this type of content, or seeking it out. I think that's really great. Additionally, like it gets your fans used to hearing from you about it. If you see stuff that's cool from them and you ask them like, hey, is it cool if we save this, or is it cool if we use this in a post? Like any of that kind of stuff, I think helps you kind of get break the language barrier a little bit around this sort of stuff if you're nervous about that. So yeah, that's a really, really good point. I also think like you start to get used to asking for UGC in particular scenarios. And here's an example that you could probably apply right now in your online store. For example, if you have a post-purchase email, right, a thank you email, I feel like most people automatically have one of those. If you have any kind of store, you probably have an order confirmation email where you're thanking people. If you set up an automation that then 14 days or 21 days, whatever an average amount of fulfillment to shipping time to have somebody get something at their door, if you follow up with them again in a second email, and you can make the subject line just something as simple as like, did you get it? And ask them in an email like, hey, did you get what you ordered? What did you think of it? I'd love to hear about it. Feel free to shoot me a photo or drop it over in our Facebook group, or tag us on Twitter, or tag us in an Instagram post, or whatever it is. We'd love to see what you think. And that kind of naturally just encourages people. And it's presented in a way that's like, you're just following up to make sure that they got it and that they liked it.
Right. Yeah, that's smart, because you're not coming out and being like, send me a picture of merch item on you, please. You're like, oh, did you get it? And if you like it, like, we'd love to see a photo of you. It's way nicer. And I think that the biggest hurdle with UGC in my mind, as I said this earlier, people are generally awkward, like myself included. If my favorite artist asks me for a picture in my t-shirt, I'm probably going to take that picture 25 times to make sure it looks good. Like, I want, not that the artist even is always going to see it, but like, I'm then like, oh man, like, what if they see it, or whatever. And so people are self-conscious and they are awkward about it. And so making it playful, like Jack just said, where you're not putting so much pressure on this creative, you're saying like, oh, did you get your thing? Like, also would love to see a picture of you, just email it back to this email. People will take that action way more than something that's like super formal and set up. Another idea I just kind of had spinning off of that is that the merch in the online store, that's a place where you can really get a lot of easy UGC. And I'm just thinking, like, and Jack was talking about, hey, send the follow-up email and they get it, right? Or like asking after they've received their stuff. I feel like it'd be really cool to, based off how your packaging is, if you did like a special bundle or something, package it so that you have like a card on the top that's like, hey, before you go any further and open the rest of this package, like, set your camera up and videotape you opening this, right? Like, something, I don't know, something like that. It's just a random thought.
Oh, like a natural way to set up an unboxing.
Right, yeah, exactly. Like a fan unboxing that you're not saying like, please recreate how you felt opening this. Just be like, hey guys, if you, put the card on top of everything and then just say like, hey, before you go any further, put your phone up. Like, we want to see you unbox this. And like, if you email us the video, we'll give you X for free. That's something as a fan that I'd be like, oh, okay, like, wonder what they're going to give me. Like, let me do this. This is such an easy ask.
Yeah, that would be super intriguing. And I've never seen an artist do something like that. I think that would be amazing. Almost like do not open this box. Like, it will explode if you don't have your camera open, or something like that.
Right.
Yeah, it's fun. It's encouraging. It gets people's curiosity up. And it kind of just gamifies the whole thing a little bit. It's like one extra exciting piece that a fan wasn't expecting. That could be really cool.
Yeah. And I think like what we're both after and talking about right now, how do you get this user generated content? We're both kind of saying the same thing in the sense of like, do it in a low pressure way that is fun for the fan. It shouldn't feel like a burden for them. Like, even, we've both kind of mentioned ways that, hey, after they get it, send a little, did you get this email? Or like, hey, maybe do it before. Those are kind of coy ways to do it, right? Even in the instance where you straight up ask, hey, will you please film a video for me? That can work too. Like, but you have to massage it, right? Like, you can't just send an email that says, please film something with your piece of merch. That's really weird. But if you use like the narrative and you talk to people like they're real people, like we're always talking about, then you can make it work. If you send an email, it's like, hey, over the last 12 months, we sold out of all of our vinyl. And that's crazy. And we were thinking about that today. And like, if you have a vinyl, we would love to see a picture or a video of you with the vinyl. There you go. Like that's a fun thing that all of a sudden people feel like, oh, it's exclusive, that like they sold out and I have a vinyl. Let me send a photo. So I guess the point of this is like, we've talked a little bit about how you get the user generated content. And I think it boils down to being creative and again, talking to people like they're real supporters and not just like a mass blanket. I think what we haven't talked about yet is like, what do you do with this content once you have it?
For sure. Yeah. And I have a really interesting use case on that. Before we dive into it, one other thing that I wanted to touch on is from a from a review standpoint on your store, which is kind of how we opened the episode, was saying like, a lot of artists don't and bands don't have reviews set up on their store, or they're not even trying to get them really. And I think that that's a really powerful way to build up social proof on your specific offers and your products. And there's a lot of really easy ways to ask people, to do that kind of thing. And frankly, you can do it in a lot of the same ways that we've already mentioned when it comes to creating user generated content. All the only difference is, instead of asking for a video or a photo or a reply in an email, you can ask for a review, and you can be really silly about it. You could say like, leave us a review of like the number one thing that you really love the day that you got, XYZ product, and tell us the one thing you hated about it, but don't be too harsh, and like leave a winky face or something. And, just joke with people and see what kind of replies you get. You can be really silly and use that to kind of encourage, 5-star reviews. Now that's just one way. Another thing that's useful, and a lot of our IndieX clients have been using this app recently, is the Looks app in Shopify. It's a way to incentivize reviews and kind of make them automated, and make sending out requests for reviews automated. That's LOOX. I'll link to it in the show notes so you can check it out. But if you're looking for a little bit of automation help, that can be a pretty cool one if you have a Shopify store. But I think reviews are another, sector of this that can be really useful. And, here's a good example of how you can use this sort of stuff. We have a client right now who has been running a very high scale sales campaign for their most recent release. And like any sales campaign, you have people that go to the sales page, they go to checkout, and then they abandon their cart. Now, one of the best things that you can do is have a great retargeting campaign in place to capture those people that saw the product page and didn't buy, right? I mean, this is one thing that if you just do that alone, and you just, change up the copy a bit and use your well-performing ad creative as the creative in this specific campaign, you'll be leaps and bounds ahead of most other artists and bands, because there's not a lot of that going on out there. But take that a step further. And what we did for this campaign was we ran a bottom of funnel retargeting campaign going after add to carts and view products for this specific offer over I think a 14-day window, and excluded anybody who had purchased, so they're getting pulled out. And we set it up so that the copy for these ads was specifically, the headline copy for these ads were reviews. They were reviews from real fans. And we put that front and center so that people could see it. And then the creative, to go a step further, we took the creative and we overlaid with product images, actual reviews, and testimonials from fans. And we used those in carousel ads for these bottom of funnel retargeting ads. And you can spend just a couple bucks a day to do this and capture people who, might not have bought if you didn't, serve them a different ad. We're picking up sales that we wouldn't have gotten, and our cost per purchase is down, 30% on the average compared to the rest of the campaigns that are running for this. So what it's really doing is showing people like, look at all the people like you that are picking this up and how much they love it. You don't want to miss out on this. And you see this in e-commerce all the time, but I think artists and bands and musicians kind of miss the memo on how to do it effectively and how to kind of leverage that social proof. So that's just one really great example of what any artist can do if you're selling stuff online.
That's such a cool ad too, because like just the idea of the copy being like, here are some reviews we got, even if you don't mention if they're good or not, that to me is way more intriguing. It's almost like that indirect introduction thing where that's like what makes the fan finder work, right? Where instead of saying our product is so great, immediately I'm like, maybe it is, maybe it's not, right? But if the thing is just, here are some reviews we got, or here are some good reviews we got, it's kind of like, oh, what are they even talking about in the first place? And you go in, you can kind of read it. Hearing from a fan, this is like Rotten Tomatoes, where like these videos or these movies will have like, a 30% from the critics, but 95% from the fans. And me personally, I'm like, well, every movie that I love has just been absolutely panned by critics for the most part, but I love it, and so do other people, right? And so like I put way more value when I see a new movie coming out, and what do other people like me have to say about this movie versus the label or the band, or like what, like we understand that if you're creating this thing and you're kind of like in that echelon, you probably love it, but what does everyone else think? And that's what's so powerful, cool about what you were just talking about, and like repurposing those videos and those pictures into simple ads, right? You can do ads, you can do Instagram posts with it, you can tweet it, you can, retweet people when they say they love your stuff. You can, something that I love to do, like kind of getting into the how do I use this content, is anytime that people post something on our Instagram story and tag us about like just found new song from the 502s, we share it. Like even if it's just a random Tuesday afternoon and they're like, just heard, Magdalene for this first time, never heard of this band but love them. To us, it's like, well, a lot of people do know this song, but like, we love that you just found it, share. And what that does is it keeps people excited. It keeps the people that have been there kind of being like, oh yeah, this is awesome. Like people, I'm in early. People are still learning about this thing.
Yeah. The I'm in early bit is really important here.
Yeah, but like the I'm in early bit is like, that does not matter how big the band is, right? Like somebody could, I don't know, like the Lumineers, right? That's like a huge folk band that I love. That is someone where if they shared a story it said like, I just heard, I would probably wouldn't believe it if someone said I just heard Ho Hey, but like I just heard Ophelia for the first time, and they shared that to their story, they retweeted it. I would read that and be like, man, that's awesome. Like I've done that song for 3 years, so like I'm glad other people are finding it, but I also feel like super important, even though there's millions of us that have heard that song, right? And so that's the kind of thing where I don't know that you can really control a lot of times with people are tagging you and stuff, the narrative of how something's received to the other fans. But I think posting it is just like, that's the effort, right? You have to get past the burden of, does anyone really care that they tagged me in this story? And it's like, well, it's cool. And that person's going to love that you just tagged them in a story and reshared their content. So like you should do it, and it doesn't take anything away from you.
Yeah, that's so true. On a similar vein, one thing that I love to do is like mining your comments for copy ideas, and specifically like headlines and subject lines, and even just like things to take people over the edge. One thing that I like to do with one of our clients in particular at IndieX, he gets a lot of comments on his YouTube videos that are just like, people showing love, or, if he's got a funny video, it's people like cracking up or making like a reference to the video or whatever. And I love to take those comments and then use them in email copy and be like, this person said this about it, and just it teases the content a little bit. And this is, for example, like if you were sending somebody to your most recent YouTube video, maybe you have a vlog or something like that, and you mine a couple comments from it and you include them in the email copy when you send it out to your fans. It drives their curiosity up to be like, why did another fan say that? And you can use that to drive that curiosity and get the click. You can use that kind of stuff in your ad copy. A lot of times when we run top of funnel ads, fan finders, for example, to get new fans, you can find the best headlines by going to the comments on your video in, your tests and be like, oh man, like that's the headline. Like, I'm gonna just pull one out of thin air here. Like if someone was like, wow, I never thought I'd see somebody play in a SEAL suit on the beach or something like that. Like if you grab that that kind of silliness from the comment section, that's somebody reacting in real time as to what broke their pattern online. You can use that in your ad copy.
Yeah, that's really cool. And it's such an organic way, because I would never think of, what was your sample headline? I've never seen somebody in a SEAL costume or whatever you just said.
Yeah.
If you're making the video in the SEAL costume, you're probably not going to think of that tagline. But minding your comments and seeing that, being like, oh, that's great. Like, and it's something someone really said. Just kind of spinning off of that idea. And I guess you're kind of tapping into the idea that, hey, there's user-generated content even in comments and even in text-based things. It's not just photos and videos. And so like, I think it's important to just kind of like say that out loud, that like, hey, those comments you're getting on your posts and your Instagram posts about how people love you, or you're the best band ever, or like, they love such and such song, or they loved your show. That's also user-generated content that you can repost those quotes. You can tweet those quotes out. You can go into Canva and make yourself a graphic using that quote. Like, if you want to, those are things that you can utilize. And it opens up new ideas too. Like I'm thinking of one where, yeah, I'm just thinking of a handful of times where for myself where I've been like, hey, I didn't think about, like you said, I didn't think about the video this way, but now that you've mentioned it, I do think about it, and like, let me go ahead and share this because of that. And so I think that's super important to just point out that comments are also user generated content.
Hopefully this gives you guys a little bit of fuel to think about how you can use one, the user generated content that you're already getting, like Ed was just saying, how you can put that into your marketing, how you can get more of it, and how you can get more of it that's effective or specifically tailored to the marketing that you're trying to do. And then what you can do with that content specifically, whether it's, for trying to get new fans or trying to get your fans to take action, or like the example that I mentioned, trying to get your fans to buy. There are places that UGC can be used throughout your whole marketing stack. And it really can be some of the most powerful content that you have, above and beyond anything that you could create on your own, because it really comes down to, it's a recommendation from a real person that actually loves what you're doing, who you are, what you're making, and sharing it with, a mass of other people that also might like what you love. So I hope you guys dug this. This was really fun to dive into and kind of analyze it at a bit of a deeper level than I think we've ever done before.
Yeah, absolutely. It's reminded me that like the best source of content is always going to come from your fans and your fans' ideas. And the more organic it is, it typically tends to do better, which is cool.
Yeah, so if you've ever gotten hung up feeling like, I just can't get, I can't get my fans to use my sound on TikTok or stitch together videos, maybe you're missing out on some of the UGC that's already there for you. Or maybe you can tap into a UGC source that's even better than that, and you don't need to worry about it so much. So I hope you guys take some of these ideas, use them in your own marketing, and we will see you guys next time on Creative Juice. Go get that content, Indies. Peace. Can y'all really feel us? East Coast, feel us. West Coast, feel me.